This is one of the things where, are you going to be a victim of a data breach? And quite frankly, that's a nonsensical question. The question is, when are you going to be a victim of a data breach? We all are. And we're only as secure as the places with the weakest security that have our information, which is why you want to limit particularly your social security number, a real key to identity theft. There are companies and agencies that ask for this that really don't need it. Your doctor doesn't need it, and yet they routinely ask for it. And the health industry has really been susceptible to data breaches. When I wrote my first book about identity theft, I mentioned, what you should do is ask to give another number, because particularly if they don't need it, you can give them your driver's license.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about scams. Wait, don't turn us off because you think you're too smart to fall for any of those thousands of scams out there, or if you think the scammers only go after the lonely or easily duped. The reality is that scammers are geniuses when it comes to separating you from your money, and few of us are as adept as the scammers when it comes to psychology and exploitation. Although we have talked about this issue before, as part of our continuing service to protect our listeners and keep them informed, we're talking about scams again. Scammers go after people of all ages, but some scams are targeting older adults by pretending to be government officials, the IRS, representatives of the Social Security Administration, or financial institutions. You may think there's nothing for the scammers to take from you, but stay tuned as our expert guest explains why he always says, quote, "Trust me, you can't trust anyone."
Steve Weisman is a lawyer, professor, former talk radio host, author, and a leading expert on identity theft and scams. Steve, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
It's great to be with you.
Let's start with why older adults seem to be the target of so many scams. Do we become more trusting as we age, or do we foolishly think we have so much life experience no one can fool us? Or is it just a typical result of aging brains?
It's interesting because this is something I've studied a lot, and many people kind of anecdotally believe that, as we get older, we become more trusting. There's also the old saw about, there was a famous bank robber, Willie Sutton, and he was once asked, why did he rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. And so for a lot of seniors, they're tempting targets. But what's been done is some studies were done at the University of Iowa and also Cornell that show there's a part of our brain that does deal with skepticism that becomes less viable as we age. So in fact, there really is a physiological basis for seniors being more likely to be scammed. Although I always add when we discuss this, that along with seniors, close behind us in getting scams are the young and the millennials. And these millennials are also being scammed in huge numbers, and they don't quite have our excuse about their brains changing.
You have a new scam every day on your blog. That's 365 scams a year. Where do you find so many scams, and how did you even become involved?
It's interesting. I first started getting interested in this actually when I became a victim of identity theft years ago. And in fact, when I started the blog, I wondered if I was going to be able to find something each day. It's been 12 years and about 4,700 unique scams. I don't repeat, some I will update. in that time. So there really is, there's no problem. You find them out there, and they're always evolving. Perhaps one of the more interesting things is I really believe there aren't any new scams. They are evolved scams. So they're out there, and scam artists, the only criminals we refer to as artists, as Miriam was explaining earlier about the brains of these criminals, they have a knowledge of psychology Freud would have envied. So the scams are always with us.
I understand that one of the red flags we should notice right away is if the person calling us mentions urgency or asks for gift cards, prepaid debit cards, cryptocurrency, or cash. So what are other red flags we should know about?
Yeah, there are a couple of areas in there. And so one of them was the sense of urgency. And this was something that I've studied quite a bit about why rather, really sophisticated, intelligent people fall for scams, and really sophisticated, intelligent people do fall for scams. And one of the things is that there's a part of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala allows us to respond to emergency situations quickly without necessarily evaluating everything carefully. But today, what happens is, as you mentioned, there will be an email, a text message, or any kind of a phone call, a communication where there is something urgent, requires you to act immediately. And the amygdala, boom, gets into action, and we make mistakes with things that we would never even consider. But as you said, there are certain red flags. So for instance, you get an email from the IRS or a text message from the IRS, and there's an immediate payment that is due. And again, that amygdala is going to start getting into action. And they ask for gift cards or they ask for cryptocurrencies. It's a sad commentary that the IRS actually has on its website. No, we don't take gift cards. We don't take cryptocurrencies. So anytime you're asked to make a payment by a cryptocurrency payment or a gift card, it's a scam. Also, even for wiring money, because wiring money is another way that money can be transferred quickly and not gotten back. And that's what the scammers want. So there are times that we will wire money or use a Venmo. But in those cases, you really need to carefully evaluate, is this something that really needs to be done?
First of all, many people are urged to go to the bank and withdraw money right away. And you have said that bank tellers don't always ask enough questions and urge bank tellers to talk to their managers and slow down the process. The second one is that with ATM machines, there's no bank teller to be worrying about whether or not they're going to do anything about it. So how do we verify these transactions?
It depends upon really what the particular transaction is, what they're asking for. So, yeah, I actually do find it really a lack of proper bank protocols. And I've spoken to banks about this with whom I consult, because I'm not going to fault the victim. The victim is falling prey to an emergency and being psychologically manipulated. That teller is not. And so when you have someone, so for instance, there's actually a civil action being brought against banks in New York by Letitia James, the Attorney General. And one of them had to do with a woman who was conned into wiring her savings on some scam. Now, the situation was the bank said no, even though they later recognized it was a scam. Too bad, you ordered it wired. But as Attorney General James pointed out, she said, here is a older woman who had never, ever wired money before, and now she's wiring her entire savings. That is something that the banks should be looking into. So my motto is, trust me, you can't trust anyone. If you get an email, you can't be sure who is really sending it. If you get a phone call, if you get a text message, even if you look at your caller ID, there's a simple technique called spoofing, where they can make that phone call appear to be coming from the IRS or anyone they want to appear to be. So it's a simple thing that you just don't trust. And so what you do is you always confirm. So for instance, one of the things that I often say is Social Security is not going to be texting you and emailing you, and the IRS is not going to be doing this. Well, I got an email from Social Security, and I was looking at it, and I'm going, this is the best I've ever seen, but I still didn't trust it. The thing was, it was legitimate. There's a program called My Social Security Account. And this is something that everyone should get. And what it does do is it allows you to go online with Social Security, have your own site in there, and you can get all kinds of information about your Social Security benefits, including if you wanted to change the bank to which your check is going to be wired. So I actually followed my own advice there. And the Social Security Administration was changing their format. So it's going to be a different site. But when I got that from Social Security, I don't trust it. And they had the link to click on. I'm still not going to trust it. So I went to Social Security, confirmed it was legitimate. But even then, you can have people, particularly using AI, make it look just like the Social Security email. So rather than click on that one, I went to the Social Security Administration website. There, I found the proper login, trusted it, and everything works out. So it's you need to do that. But I'll tell you an amusing one as far as not knowing. PayPal. A lot of people use PayPal, and whatever everyone uses, the public uses, the scammers are there. So I got an email from PayPal. There's a problem. My account has been charged this money, and there's a link for me to check on and a number to call if I want to dispute it. But rather than dispute it there, I checked. I went directly to PayPal. The interesting thing is, if you want to call PayPal, you will get the customer service number. And once you get in there, it'll go, if you want this, press 1. If you want this, press 2. If you want that, then you go to 2. And it says, if you want this, you go through about 5 things before you get where you go. The scammers provide much better customer service. If you click on the link in the PayPal scam, you will get a real person right away who is quite willing to help you.
You know, we've read that so many millions of dollars are lost every year to scams, but at the same time, many victims don't report them because they're embarrassed. And there's a feeling that even if you report it, you're not going to get your money back. So why bother to report it? So are there any remedies you know about besides this Letitia James issue?
Yeah, this is it. Everything you said was absolutely 100% true. And unfortunately so. We look at the billions of dollars that are lost to scams. And then we recognize, and the Federal Trade Commission and the FBI have said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So many people, out of embarrassment or sometimes don't even realize that they've been scammed, don't report. The problem is, if you don't report, you're really helping the scammers, because if we're going to have any defenses, we have to know what's going on. So there's that. The unfortunate thing is, quite often, I would say more often than not, if you've been scammed, you're not going to get the money back, particularly if it's done by a scammer in North Korea or in Russia or some other foreign country. However, much to my surprise and joy, I have found in recent years, in particular, the FBI has done a pretty good job of going against the cryptocurrencies that have been used to scam people out of, and which are supposedly so anonymous and difficult to reach. The FBI has actually gotten back a lot of that. So it still is worth reporting. There is always a chance.
And who do you recommend that people call and report these scams? And
Well,
do they ever catch the scammers?
on occasion. As a matter of fact, I teach at Bentley University. Before I taught at Bentley University, I taught in the state prison system in Massachusetts. And some of my old con men criminals were decrying the fact that back in their day, it took skill to be a counterfeiter and a con man. And they said, today a 14-year-old with a computer can do it. But the bottom line is, particularly if you're a victim of identity theft, You need to report it to your local police, who won't be able to do anything about it. You need to report it to your state attorney general. You need to report it to the Federal Trade Commission. The reason I say you need to report it to your local police is if you don't report it to the police, you're going to make it more difficult when the identity thief may build up debts in your name. So if you report as soon as you learn about it, you're going to be in a better position to protect your identity. That being said, local attorney generals, the FBI, and particularly the Federal Trade Commission deal with this a lot, and they're the people you really want to contact.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you about the grandchild scam that we hear about and so many people have been affected by, where you get the call now with a fake voice. I mean, they're using your actual grandchild's actual voice, asking grandma, grandpa for money, and you send money. How can we protect ourselves against that? I've often heard, get a family password, or ask the kid, what's the name of your older brother or younger sister, something that the scammers might not know. Do those really work?
The password does. Things like the generally speaking, the criminals who are doing these gather incredible amounts of information about the people that they're targeting first. And it comes to, with many of these identity theft and scams, we post, and particularly our kids and grandkids post much too much personal information on social media. And these calls do come in when people are disoriented late at night. There's the emergency. And here, as you mentioned, and this was something I testified before the Senate's Select Committee on Aging last fall about the effect of AI on scams targeting seniors. And one of them that is so much worse now is, as you alluded to, the grandparent scam with AI used simple techniques. The scammers only need about 30 seconds worth of voice, which they can get of the grandchild through social media, in order to clone that voice and have it sound exactly like the grandchild. And so this is something that has made this so much worse. So the simple solution, and I like simple solutions, is, as you mentioned, Lynn, you get a password. And right away, you ask for that password. If they don't know the password, then you know it's not legitimate. And, it's unfortunate that families have to have this today.
I suggested to my grandson that we use the name of my hometown, and he said, Grandma, that's too obvious. Get another one. I thought, okay.
And he's actually right on that one, because here again, it's the kind of information that they're able to gather. And it's simple for them to gather because, again, using AI, they can harvest so much information about us that they know more about us than I do.
I seem to get a letter. Well, actually, I got 2 letters just this week telling me that some organization that has my information has been hacked and there's a data breach. And they suggest that we freeze our credit or do something like that. So is that really necessary? How much information does someone gather if they get into an organization's email list?
It depends. And, this is one of the things where, are you going to be a victim of a data breach? And quite frankly, that's a nonsensical question. The question is, when are you going to be a victim of a data breach? We all are. And we're only as secure as the places with the weakest security that have our information, which is why you want to limit particularly your social security number, a real key to identity theft. There are companies and agencies that ask for this that really don't need it. Your doctor doesn't need it, and yet they routinely ask for it. And the health industry has really been susceptible to data breaches. When I wrote my first book about identity theft, I mentioned, what you should do is ask to give another number, because particularly if they don't need it, you can give them your driver's license. My advice is, first of all, as you mentioned, Miriam, everyone should freeze their credit. It is the single best thing you can do to protect your assets and protect yourself from identity theft. You should also do credit monitoring of your credit reports to see if your identity has been breached and someone is running up charges in your name. Now, it used to be that you could get it free once a year from each of the three major credit reporting agencies. But then during COVID, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion all agreed to allow people to do it for free and on a weekly basis. Then last year, they made that permanent. So you go to annualcreditreport.com, still says annual, and you can get your free credit report. I don't think you need to do it weekly, but I would say about once a month is a good idea to do that. But that and freezing your credit and using dual factor authentication. So when you go to your account online, if someone manages to steal your password, or if somehow it gets breached otherwise, they're not going to be able to access your account because with dual factor authentication, generally the way it's done is a code is sent to your email, and you put that in along with your password in order to access. So dual factor authentication, monitor your credit, and credit freezing absolutely are the right things to do.
So phone calls, emails, and text messages, we all use, as do the fraudsters. We're so dependent on our computers and our phones, and we warn our listeners never to click on a message, even if it looks real, and don't return the call using the number provided or the one displayed. Call the institution, the number on their website, but fraudsters make their own website that look legitimate. So what do we do?
You really just, you can't trust these things. You've got to know. But as far as the websites go, which has gotten worse, it used to be the websites they would put up, particularly if you're getting one from China, you're getting one from, Russia or someplace where English is not the primary language, they're a joke. But now they can look really good. And you can't trust your Google. You can't trust your Siri. Give me the customer service number for Sears, if there are any anymore. So Costco will say. So what Siri will do is just do a search engine search, a Google search, or any other search engine search, and find what comes up top. And what the scammers do is two things. One, they'll do what takes skill. They will create a website with a customer service number or a website for the company, as you were pointing out, you're looking for, that will look really good. So you can't trust Google there. Then there are the lazy scammers, and what they will do is just buy an ad. They'll buy an ad so that they get a top place in a search engine search when you're looking for Costco, you're looking for Amazon, you're looking for whatever. So you have to be really, really careful even there. And with the customer service number issue, there are certain companies with which we deal that don't even use customer service numbers. You have to do everything with an email or a text message. But people will look for a customer service number, and the scammers are only too willing to oblige.
One thing I want to warn our listeners about is that the scammers impersonating the IRS or Medicare threatened sometimes, saying, we're going to call the police, or we're going to have you deported, anything like that. So is the best advice for these people to hang up, or is a scammer going to call back, or what should they do when they really get scared?
You don't engage. The IRS, first of all, one of the things I always say is, how do you know if it's the IRS calling? Your caller ID appears to show it's the IRS. And it's a really simple way to know that the IRS is not calling. And that is, the IRS doesn't call you. The IRS doesn't email you. The IRS doesn't text message to you. So whenever you get ones, and then, legitimate companies, and even if it's coming from your utility company threatening to turn off immediately, they don't make these kind of threats. Again, the scammers are appealing to the amygdala, make that emergency decision. So we need always to calm down. One of the things, and a good way of doing that and to avoid the emergency is, I do this myself, it's one of the things I actually follow. If I see on my caller ID, first of all, if I see the IRS, I'm not going to answer it. But if I see a phone number that I don't recognize, I don't pick it up. And let it go. If it's legitimate, they'll leave a voicemail. And if they leave a voicemail, you can kind of take your time to respond to that and maybe think it through a little bit better.
I can hear in your voice that you're talking with a smile and you have a laugh and you're very relaxed. I don't feel so relaxed listening to all of this.
It's true. I don't think I've ever done an interview where someone didn't say, "You scared the whatever out of me." And it's the stories are great. We've seen this happen with people who are just totally embarrassed there. The romance scams, which are huge, are now luring vulnerable people into paying money to someone they think is in love with them. People fall for this. They trust people that they shouldn't. And that's a big thing with a lot of scams. There's an area of the law or of scams we call affinity fraud. We tend to trust people who are like us. Well, who's like us? It depends where you identify. It can be your church, your synagogue. It could be a racial thing. It can be military. And there again, trusting people without verifying is a recipe for danger.
Well, this has been very upsetting and useful information for all of us. And I want to thank you so much for helping our listeners become aware of the variety of the scammers. Our guest was Steve Weisman of Scamicide.com. Today on News You Can Use, we want to discuss a way you can help in the development of new medications and strategies to treat and prevent diseases by participating in clinical trials. According to the National Institutes of Health, many effective treatments that are used today, including chemotherapy, cholesterol-lowering drugs, and many vaccines, would not exist without research participants.
But while older adults are the majority users of many of these new drugs and treatments, they're not always included in the clinical studies. As people age, their bodies change, and they have different reactions to certain drugs and doses. Having older adults in the studies help researchers get the right information for the right group. But why would you want to join a clinical study? There's several reasons.
If the study is about a disease that affects someone you know or runs in your family, you can learn more about it and feel like you are playing an active role in your treatment. In addition, you're helping researchers find new ways to prevent and treat that disease for future generations. Clinical research also tests ways to diagnose a disease early, find approaches to prevent those at risk of developing a disease, and improving the quality of life for people with the disease.
So what should you do if you want to join a clinical trial? Well, according to the National Institute on Aging, the first step is to find a study that interests you. Check out their website at nia.com to see what's available. The next step is to contact the research staff, who will explain the study and do a comprehensive screening to be sure that you qualify. Researchers know that it may be challenging for some older adults to join a clinical trial or study. The time required may be too much, or transportation to the study may be difficult. Some studies may require a short stay in the hospital. Others may require a study partner. Talk to the research coordinator about any concerns you think might affect your ability to participate. There may be financial compensation for participants, or you may have parking or other expenses that will be covered. If you have health insurance, find out if it will cover any expenses involved. All of these issues will be covered before the study begins.
And if you're accepted, you may receive the new drug or treatment or be in the control group. As a participant, you will follow the trial procedures and report issues or concerns. Because you're trying something new, you should continue to see your regular physician for your usual health care. Once the study ends, you'll learn the results and what it means for the future use of the drug.
There are several phases to most drug or device trials. First will be a small group to judge for its safety. Then the trial will include even more people, studying how it affects different populations and whether different dosages should be adjusted. The bottom line is that researchers need older adults so they can learn more about the new drugs, tests, and devices that will work for us. Having older adults in clinical trials helps researchers develop the right treatment for this age group, which means a safer and healthier time for all of us. And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks go to our guest expert, Steve Weisman. To read his daily blog, go to Scamicide.com. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we want to thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All of these are free and help us to know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.